Hi and welcome to my Python YouTube channel. It's awesome to have you here. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be great. And make sure to subscribe for future videos. I also have a blog at prospercoder.com with lots of cool stuff, so feel free to check it out. We've been talking about functions a lot, but let's try to systematize everything we know about them. Today we'll start talking about the very basics of functions, and in future videos we'll go into more detail. So if you know the basics of functions, there isn't going to be much fun for you in this video, and maybe you should move on to some more advanced stuff. But on the other hand, you may want to recap on the basics as well, so feel free to do so. You can also read the written version of this video on my Python programming blog at prospercoder.com. Now, repetitive code versus dry code. Before we move on to discuss functions, let's have a look at the following code. Pretty lengthy, but very simple. So here we have a string with all the letters of the alphabet, which are then printed in a loop, and after each letter, a star is added. Then the program asks us if we want to print the alphabet in such a fancy way again. If we choose yes, then it prints the alphabet again, using the same code as here, exactly the same code as here. But if we say no, it says, I don't accept a no. Now I'll do it twice, as a punishment, I suppose, and here it prints the alphabet just like before, twice. So we have this piece of code again, here and here. As you can see, this code is very repetitive. Now let's run it to see what it looks like. So here is the alphabet. Here we have the alphabet with the stars. Do you want me to print the alphabet in such a fancy way? Again, let's choose no. I don't accept a no. Now I'll do it twice. Here's the alphabet and here's the alphabet again. Fine. So this code works, but what if we wanted to make a change and separate the letters with dollar signs instead of stars? Easy. We would have to make the change 4 times in the code, because this piece of code is used 4 times here, 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 and here. Well, 4 times the same. What if the same code were repeated 20 or 100 times in the program instead of 4? What if there were more changes to make? Now, it doesn't look that simple anymore. Even worse, what if after making all those changes you notice that you made a mistake somewhere? Then you would have to go over all the repeating pieces of code again and correct them. Sounds like there must be a better way of doing this. And there is. Repetitive code is bad and should be avoided. Good code should be dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. The first letters, dry. Each piece of code should be written only once, in one place, so that if any changes are necessary, we only need to make them in one place. The solution to that are functions. So what is a function? A function is a piece of code consisting of multiple statements that has a name and can be used multiple times in our code. Instead of writing all the statements all over again where needed, we just use the name of the function with parentheses to run them. We then say that we call the function. So calling a function consists in running the statements which belong to it. Using functions makes the code more readable and much more maintainable. If you need to make a change, you make it only in one place, in the definition of the function. After that, the change takes effect whenever we call the function. There are lots of built-in functions in Python like print, len, or upper. But we can define our own functions. Such functions are called user-defined functions. So how do we define a function? In the simplest scenario, we use the following syntax. First of all, we need the def keyword, which means we are beginning to define a function. Then comes the name of the function, which will be later used to call the function. After the name, there is a pair of parentheses. Sometimes there is something in the parentheses, but in the simplest example, there may be nothing like here. Anyway, we must use them even if empty. Then comes the colon, and in the next line, we can start with all the statements that build the body of the function. Fine, so this is just for demonstrative purposes. We don't need it in our code. And now back to our example, we can easily find the piece of code which is repeated. Here it is. This piece of code is repeated. Let's turn it into a function. We say we're extracting a function. A good name seems to be fancy alphabet. So let me copy that and paste it at the very top of the file where I'm going to define the function. So here we need the def keyword followed by the name fancy alphabet followed by parentheses and a colon. And now this is the body of the function. It must be indented. Fine. Now this is a function. And now how do we call the function? Now we can rewrite our code using this function. We just have to call the function whenever the repeated code was used. Changing the form of your code so that it has a different structure but still does the same job is called refactoring. So let's refactor our code by first defining the function, which you already did, and then calling it when needed. So to call the function, we need the name of the function. So let's copy the name. And now, wherever this code is used, we'll be calling the function instead. So here is the first occurrence. Let's just replace it with a call to our fancy alphabet function. What's important, we must use the parentheses to call the function. Fine, so here is the first occurrence of our function call. Let's copy that all. And now, here, if again equals yes, here we have this code again. So let's replace it with our function. Else, and here we have this code twice. So let's replace it again. Here and here. So now we're calling our function 4 times, but we're defining it only once. Good. Now if we run this code, we will get exactly the same as before. So let's choose no again, and we have the same output. Good. And now suppose you wanted to change the stars to dollar signs, just like I mentioned before. So all you have to do now is make the change in the body of the function. So here in one place, let's change this star to a dollar sign, like that. And that's all. Let's run again. Now you can see we have dollar signs instead of stars. And now let's choose yes. Good. Fine, it works. And now, some PEP8 guidelines for functions. Here are some PEP8 guidelines for functions. They should be followed for good coding style. We should separate functions from the rest of the code, also from other functions, by a blank line. We should also use blank lines to separate larger blocks of code inside functions. We should put comments on separate lines if possible. We should use docstrings. Well, I'm not using docstrings here, but I should. We should use spaces before and after operators, so rather A space plus space B than A plus B. We should also use spaces after commas. So print A, comma, space, B, comma, space, C, and not print A, B, C. We shouldn't use spaces after opening and before closing parentheses, brackets, or braces. So, for example, multiply, open parentheses, 3, blank, 5, close parentheses is okay. Whereas multiply, open parentheses, blank, 3, blank, 5, blank, close parentheses isn't. We should use lowercase names for functions with underscores to separate words. Like, for example, remove, add, numbers, rather than remove all numbers. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like it, a thumbs up would be great. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Thanks for watching.